Konnichiwa! Welcome to the first devlog of my first-person dungeon crawler game. Yeah, I know. A first-person dungeon crawler game? Nani? It's my first time. Be gentle. This type of gameplay can be seen in the early Shin Megami Tensei games such as Persona 1 and Devil Summoning, just to name a few. Another game I do want to throw out there is the Silver Case. Despite it being more of an interactive graphic novel, it does use its 3D movement to explore levels, do puzzles, and to progress through the wacky story it has. And actually, if you haven't tried out this beefcake of a game, I don't know, man, maybe go check it out. Now, the name for this game is the working title, Project Insomnia. Why? Because it gave me insomnia. Also, for this project, we'll be using the Unity game engine. I'll be demonstrating the ups and downs of development, sharing my experience, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. Okay, to start off, we need to create the movement for the player. We'll be using grid movement. These types of games have a unique style of movement where you can move horizontally and vertically, but not diagonally, like in a grid. Also, you have to use separate buttons to turn around. With that said, you can't move around freely or look around. But that's exactly what we're looking for. Anyways, here's my first attempt, and it's complete trash. So I thought I could give it regular free movement and round its position to the nearest whole number, but it just ended up being just straight up bad. Since it does use floats to calculate the position of the player, well, whenever you convert a float into an integer, it always rounds down. That meant that I had to actively hold the move button for about 2 seconds before the dude took a step. And that's because if the input value is 0.9999999, it rounds down. And thus, it never moved. Then, I decided not to bash my head against the wall and did what any person with 2 brain cells would do. I looked up a tutorial. Luckily, I found this great and simple tutorial by Comms3 Interactive, where he creates 2D grid movement to mimic a chess game. I followed his wisdom and modified it to make it work in 3D and added the ability to turn. I know, crazy stuff, right? Finally, I added collision detection so that you don't go through walls, and even included the small animation where the MC bounces off the surfaces it collides with. This gives it a better game feel and to clearly show why the MC may not be moving in a specific direction since the camera can be limiting. Now, I wasn't kidding when I said I couldn't sleep. So I moved on to the next part, which is implementing a dialogue system. So we can talk to NPCs, have a random dude tell us his life story before he kicks our ass, or just communicate with the player like when picking up an item or there's a change to the level. So, again, deciding not to bash my brains into the wall, I found this tutorial by BMO, or BMO? Anyways, he creates a simple dialogue system with animated text, and it's under 5 minutes. There is another great tutorial by our Unity Lord and Savior, but I decided to go with the simpler option, mostly because it's easier to understand and modify. Implementing the tutorial was pretty straightforward, and I got it up and running pretty fast, in 5 minutes, only to realize it's a bit too simple. This dialogue system is very linear and only displays sentence after sentence after sentence until there's no more sentences. I wanted a more dynamic dialogue system where the player may have options at any given point throughout the conversation and even be able to branch out into a new conversation and come back to the main conversation. I did look around and found Ink, which is a free plugin for Unity that also looks pretty good. There is a pretty nice and crispy tutorial by Jason Wyman if you're interested. But I didn't go with Ink for a couple of reasons, but mostly because around this time the hallucinations were kicking in and they were whispering in my ear and they told me, hey, you should do your own dialogue system from scratch. So how hard can it be, right? I began to design this magnum opus of a dialogue system on paper, right? With graphs and with arrows and shit. Eventually, I did come up with the first draft, and here's how it works. We're gonna need two scripts. One is a dialogue script that will keep an array of strings that will be our conversation, right? This script will be on all NPCs that will have something to say. The second script will be our dialogue handler that will receive the dialogue and display it and such. It'll handle creating the buttons with functionality through Unity events. I can pretty much have the buttons do whatever I want, right? But for now, they'll either take you to the next sentence or a specific sentence in the conversation. They'll either branch out to another conversation or start from the beginning. It took a couple of drafts until I came up with something I was pretty happy with. And these are the results. Okay, I kid you not. When I was looking for tutorials on more advanced dialogue systems, I could not find any. And by the time I was done creating my own dialogue system, all of a sudden, I'm getting suggested tutorial after tutorial after tutorial. But it's all good, man. Now, there was one change I had to make. It might not be a big deal or it might not be as obvious at first glance, but I thought it wasn't great how the dialogue text kept dynamically moving around when adjusting the size of the dialogue box, right? So I went back to the games influencing this project to see how they did it, and I realized they mostly keep the speaker sentences and the player's responses on separate windows. I thought this approach was way better, so I did that. Now the speaker's dialogue box remains at a fixed position at a fixed size, while the player's responses have a dynamic window that changes its size depending on how many response options the player has. So after making these changes, here's the results. Now your attention isn't jumping around when you're trying to read these goddamn sentences. Now, if you're still here, we may be thinking the same thing. This game does not look sexy. Where's the goddamn anime waifus with jiggle physics? Where's the combat animations? Where's the blood? And you're right. Right now we're focusing on the foundations to get our idea across before we get caught up in those little details, because it can cause development to slow down or straight up stop. Most developers starting out will get stuck here and may never finish their game. It's important to finish the foundations, right? Because I guarantee that you'll have to make some changes once all your mechanics are in place. We want to keep things simple to improve performance, readability, and or to simply clean up the code. But I promise you, we're gonna make this game look gorgeous. But that's gonna be another time because the sun has risen, which means I can finally go to sleep. Tune in next time where we tackle the turn-based combat. Consider subscribing to follow the development of Project Insomnia, and thank you for watching. Let me know what you think or leave any suggestions if any are you even watching this. It's unclear how this development journey will be, right? But like one badass otaku once said,
I want to be number one. How's that? Short and simple enough for you? It's gonna be a long, hard road. But who knows? Could kick ass. Could be dangerous. Could totally suck. What do you say, bro? Join me. Let's see how far we can take this.
And for you there holding the controller right now, just press the A button. Let the bloodshed begin.